And you should be live now.
Thank you. This is a meeting of the Marlington Board of Education Policy Committee meeting on February 23rd, 2021. And I'll turn this over to Mrs. Sutton for our policy review updates. Or someone else.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ed.
Morning, Ed.
Well, however you want to start. You want me to lead, Mike, or?
Yeah, you could start, Ed. Yep, go ahead.
And then do we want, who is presenting? It looks like Leah is presenting. Is that okay? Everybody can see that presentation? Good. Well, with this update, we have 3 different sections to the update. You have non-discrimination updates, which are about 10 or 11 different updates that were tied in to relate with the Title IX changes that were approved last summer in 2266. Now, along with that, there's been some recommended updates for the last 6 months with the 2266, and we're going to look at that change today. So you have a bunch of updates there in the non-discrimination, anti-harassment ones. We can start there if you would like. Since Leah's got that open, we might as well do that. You'll see that there are 9 different sections or 9 different policies that are tied in to the same kind of changes that reflect your compliance officer titles and so on. So I went ahead and updated them based on your current listing of your compliance officers. So if you want to click on 1422 first, you guys, if you look at the summary for each one of these sections, you'll find that there's 3 policies and they're all tied together by the second set of digits. So you have 1422, which is the administrative side. Then you have 3122, which is the professional staff side. And then you have 4122 is the policies related to the classified employees. So changes that take place in these 3 policies are all pretty identical. But because each policy, and I've caught some of my clients doing this, they thought they could take 1422, just highlight it, and then cut and paste the entire policy language in each one of those sections. You really can't do that because you have one that communicates about administrators, 3122 communicates about professional teaching staff, and then 4122 talks about classified staff. So there are some little subtle differences in the normal language. But as you scroll down through 1422, you'll see that we make some of the, some clarifications on the definitions. There was some confusion about non-discrimination and anti-harassment compared to the policy that changed at the federal government level for Title IX changes. And the Title IX changes and regulations all were changed in 2266 last summer. So all these changes that you have in 1422 are reflecting and separating the 2 different policies. So this non-discrimination is not dealing with Title IX relationships, but other forms of any harassment and discrimination that may take place within the school that doesn't reach to the federal level. So if Leah, if you'll scroll back up just a little bit to where the compliance officers were at. Right in here. So as you'll see, you kept Carol and Daniel Swisser as your 2 compliance officers. Did that change, Mike?
Well, that will change because Carol is leaving us. So I don't know that we have a person for that yet.
Okay, well, when you do, you're able to change that. So
Okay.
leaving tomorrow or at the end of the school year?
Yep, we'll have to make sure that person gets the necessary training.
Yeah, that would be important. And so in the meantime, you could keep it there until that position does change.
Okay,
And then you can easily go in, or Leah can go in and put the name of the new person in there and then just inform the board. Now, there's a couple ways that school districts do this. If they go to change the names of the compliance officers in there, you may end up doing it one or two ways. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on this, but it's what your board is supportive and comfortable with. Generally, because it's a technical change, you're not changing the policy, you're just changing the person who is doing that. What you would do is change that name. Leah can make that change. And you can either just inform the board if they're okay with that, or with those changed policies, you resubmit them as a listing in the board minutes and the board item, and let the board know that these policies have been updated with a technical change of replacing the name of the compliance officer. And the board can blanketly approve all of those. And that way you're in the minutes that you're updating, and then you would send that update to the to Neola Production at neola.com, and they'll then make that policy active for your website. That's the recommended approach. That way the board's aware that you're making the change. The board is signing off on that final change, technical change, and then production will create an update in there. So as you scroll down, Leah, Leah, if you'll scroll down a little bit further, then we use the templates on these 9 policies because there's so darn many changes. By time we would make the changes and merge them with your normal policies, it would look the exact same way. So you might as well just use the template. And they've taken away some of the, our attorneys have taken away some of the options that you have. So as you continue to scroll down, the change where it gets to right here, where it has the decision of the superintendent is final. You guys did not use that approach. You guys have used the second option in the past. And so therefore I changed that, and it should reflect your current policy, but Mike, you just have to double check that to make sure exactly what you guys want. Many places have the decision of the superintendent, but your group has the process that goes to the final decision with an appeal through the board. And if that's what the board is comfortable with, that's how you've had it in the past. That's where you would maintain it at this point. But if that's not correct, you would have to make the changes there, Leah.
okay.
Other than that, as you scroll down, you'll see that these different items now go into greater detail and specificity about retaliation. This was a weak area that our attorneys felt we needed to strengthen. So there's more information in there, and all these other changes and options reflect your current policy. So when you read it, your current policy is this language with the revisions added to it. So again, the changes you see here are identical in 1422, 3122, and 4122. We can go through each one of them, but they're identical. But you'll need to review those, Mike, to make sure that there's no changes. And if you make changes in the one, then you need to change all 3 to be consistent. We'll move on then to the next set of 3, Leah. Start with 1623.
Ed, could I ask a question on that before you move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you just briefly go over the options to the board and administration as far as what options are available versus what Marlington options are? And with Dr. Mike being new, I think it'd be good for everyone maybe to hear what options there are, so it might be of consideration.
All right, do you want to do that with the last one, 1422?
If you don't mind.
No, you just tell me which one you want, 1422. Leah, can you increase your screen by control? If you're using a Windows-based machine, it would be control plus sign. It makes it a little easier for everybody to see the area. That's perfect,
There
right?
we go. It's better.
So scroll to the top. So starting through it, as you'll see, there's no options with this language. Our attorneys recommend that this is the additional clarification. And then we'll get into the compliance officers. So if you'll stop right there, you'll see the draft. With the draftings, we highlight and delete the drafts, but the drafts are still there. So you can read through and see what those options are. The options pretty much talks about a recommendation of having a male and a female compliance officer. And then you are required to list your district title, district phone number, address, so that way a reasonable person can contact and know how to contact your compliance officers. So as we scroll down, then you'll see that we cut and pasted and put in those two individuals that you've had all along. And then continue to scroll down. The district has always placed this information on your district website. So as you can read the first line that's crossed out, the names, titles, contact information of these individuals will be published annually on the school district's website. We believe that's a bare minimum. And most districts, that's all they're doing now, because they've done away with staff handbooks. They've done away with the school annual report and individual school district, school websites, and then the district calendars. Some districts do put their compliance officer and Title IX information on a calendar. You can do that. But those are the options. So when you see a parentheses like that, it tells you that those are options. In the old days, you could, on the paper copy, you would just check it. Under the board docs, redlining and mark changes, you either put an X in that box or you delete. And that creates a strike through for language that you do not want. So if you decide that you want to include this in a district calendar, then Leah would have to go through and remove the deleted line. So if that's something that you would like, you can make that change. Does that make sense? All right, you want to scroll down, please? And then halfway through this first paragraph, you'll see that there was a section in there. We removed the Title IX because it's not applicable to this policy. And then there was a section at the beginning of any sections of the district collective bargaining agreement. You've had that in your current policy, so I just accepted that line and in essence deleted that paragraph, that parenthesis. It's a funky trick with board docs for some dumb reason. It takes and moves those parentheses when you delete it. I don't know why, and I can't stop it. So I just accept it. Production will clean it up. But if you don't want to include any sections of the district collective bargaining, then you would strike that whole line and remove it. And then we always take out our editing notes called the end options, as you'll see. So we give you notes that help you work through the changes. Then any kind of public records, which these are public records, they're always available upon request from the compliance officers. So CO is compliance officers. The other changes that you'll see in the next paragraph, you can report shall, the report shall file it with the compliance officer. You could take this option at her first convenience, or you take the second option, which is what you have in your current policy. And we struck the paragraph, so you would include within 2 school days. Go ahead and scroll down that text. Really, there's no options in that change. Sexual investigation, sexual discrimination, harassment. We provided additional clarification there, but there's no options there. Informal complaint procedures, there's really no options in there either. It was clarification language from our attorneys. Formal complaint procedures, no options. And right here's one option that you have at the conclusion of the investigation. The CO may consult with the board's legal counsel before finalizing the report to the superintendent. Majority of districts would do that. I don't see any reasons why you would not allow the compliance officer to check with board counsel to make sure things are done properly and we didn't have any mistakes. And that is in your current policy. And then as you scroll down where we talk about making the final decision, you have the parenthesis checked for a complainant or respondent who is dissatisfied with the final decision of the superintendent may appeal through a written statement to the board. So you either have the first option of the decision of the superintendent shall be final, or a complainant will go to the board. And then of the end of those options is the drafting note called end of options, and that's what we would remove. So that's really the only 2 options you have there. I think that should include all of them. So go ahead and scroll down. We had the explanation and about retaliation and further clarification there. Now down at these bottom codes, you have from M, you have to do at least up to M, but the drafting notes as indicated here, the following options should be selected if the board concludes that the following items are not adequate and need to have more information than what was listed in the preceding paragraphs. Most districts do not include these copies. You did include at least the first documentation of any training, and then the rest of them you don't include or haven't included. Now you could, if you read through them and decide that you want to do additional stuff. I've seen, and I can't advise you one way or another, but I have seen that the larger district that you have, then the more you may document. So if you're in a bigger urban setting, you may have more of these issues, and therefore you may consider doing additional documentation. But no matter what documentation that you do have for any of these investigations, you must retain those. So if you want any of them, you just have to undo the deleting. Since these are templates, Leah, you may not be able to take the strikings out. You may have to start at the end of each paragraph if you want them and retype the words. It might be quicker and easier to do that. If the striking doesn't come off. So that helps clarify how we do the different policies and when you have those options. We did update all the citations to make sure that they're accurate. So if you want to make any of those changes, just make the changes consistently with all 3 if you can. And then take a look at 1623. This one deals with section 504 ADA prohibition against discriminating for employment of administrators, professional staff, and classified staff. So as you scroll down through these, through the policy, you'll see the same scenarios of setting up your compliance officers. And again, with the report, which you normally do this on your district website. Those options are all still there. Here's some different options to be compliant. The district compliant officers, since you have two, the proper grammar would be are responsible for coordinating. So we give you, if you're only doing one compliance officer, it would read the compliance officer is responsible. But since you have two, we have the compliance officers, plural, are responsible. And so that's those options right there. Training, facilities, notification about where you're providing notice for somebody that wants to file a complaint against discrimination. In the policy, the federal Title IX policy that deals with defining days as business days or school days. And we wanted to make sure that there was consistent interpretation of days throughout all the policies. So at one point, if there wasn't true clarification, especially through the federal regs on Title IX, exactly what days meant. So there were just too many questions from our districts. So we added this to help clarify in all of those discrimination and anti-harassment policies. So that's why that was added. Internal complaint procedures. So certain places we had work days, which business days. So having the one statement helped clean that all up and to make sure we weren't missing other areas. Your Office of Civil Rights complaint location. And so we've included that in the policy to allow individuals to see who they could file a federal complaint with. So again, in that policy of 1623, you have 1623, 3123, 4123. They're all the same changes. If you jump to 1662, you're in that second group of anti-harassment ones. And so the anti-harassment dealing with 1662, 3362, and 4362, again, administrative, professional, and classified staff. This one here, you have a handful of options. The district has elected not to offer this in their current policy. So the first option you have, the district will offer counseling services to any person found to have been subjected to unlawful harassment. You just haven't had this in your policy, but it is an option that you guys could do if you decide you would like to offer. And then this language was all removed. Other violations of any harassment, and then things were clarified in the definitions to help provide further clarity on the type of days, what are third-party individuals, and what's the school district community members mean. And so we get into bullying. We really didn't make many changes there. Definitions of harassment, sexual harassment. And again, you'll see that this policy and all the normal school district or state policies do not reflect the Title IX conditions. And so therefore, you'll see that a lot of those citations were removed. Sexual harassment covered under policy 2266 deals with the Title IX. And so we're drawing that out of this policy to make sure there's clarification between normal complaints of sexual harassment and any other kinds of harassment. Graffitis, the other option you have is on line F unwelcome and inappropriate touching, patting, or pinching, and you've included obscene gestures. So I included that for you. Let's go ahead and scroll down. This was a drafting note that was left. For some reason, it didn't have the word drafting in this paragraph. And so many school districts kept it as a note in the policy. So we've finally added the word drafting. I don't know how we didn't catch it. And so the whole paragraph is there for your understanding of the definitions of sexual battery and so on. But it really doesn't need to be in the policy. And so it's recommended that you strike all the drafting notes. So this is a change from your normal policy. Go ahead and scroll down.
Frozen. Okay.
There you go. And then your compliance officer options that we've taken out and then added your 2 compliance officers. And again, keeping it consistent with what you've had, you're putting your contact information on your district website. Same changes that we made. These 2 compliance officers are responsible. Go ahead. We cleaned all this out instead of making it, adding paragraphs here and there. They just struck all of it at once and then added the new language up above this complaint with the compliance officers. There's really very little options you have other than you come down with your final procedures. All right, here's a change. There is an option for you. The compliance officer may again consult with board's legal counsel. I mean, you would think that you would normally do that, but if you don't, you'd have to change that from your current policy. Again, your current policy has the respondent has the ability to file an appeal with the board. You can go ahead and scroll down. Definitions of retaliation. So many of these changes in all 9 of these policies are the same. And again, you're back into the options of additional documentation. You guys have always maintained N, where you have documentation of any training, and then you don't include the additional items. You can, you just have to make that decision and Leah can make those changes. So in essence, those anti-harassment changes are consistent in 1662, 3362, and 4362. Questions on those anti-harassment ones? Let's take a look at, scroll down, see if 2260 is in there. You'll scroll down on the left column.
Yeah, I think this is. Did you want 2260?
Well, is it in there? Keep going down. 2260. There you go. Okay, good. You did catch it. All right, good. I'm sorry. We've had quite a few of our policies that use the words transgender identity, and we've removed the trans from all those policies. So you'll see in a couple areas that trans has been deleted. Again, same definitions in this anti-harassment, general anti-harassment policy and programming and for students. Same compliance officers, the same type of changes.
I know.
There you go. See, as you can tell, they all look pretty much identical. So if you go and add additional documentation in the one you should do it for all 9 of those policies. So that would bring you up to the anti-discrimination ones. You may have a 5517. So on the programming side, students, this is programming. So on the programming, it's the general statement about anti-harassment in the district. And you have almost identical changes in there. And I'm assuming, Mike, that the board members have access to see this, or is this the first time they are seeing it as Lee is presenting it? Do they have?
They have access to this.
Okay. So they can see it live in board docs then. Right. I just didn't want them to have to be trying to see this as we're scrolling through quickly, because nobody can do that. And again, your compliance officer options, your decision of appeals to the board, clarification on retaliation. And again, the documentation. So all the non-discrims, those 11 are all pretty much identical changes. As you review them, if you're okay with that, Mike, and for the board, you would be able to go ahead and do the board's first reading on the non-discrim policies, if you're ready.
Okay.
Changes, or once you do the first reading, you could make changes by the time you go to second reading, and then you make sure that the board is approving the final version. You don't have to clean out all the redlining. You send the redline version to production. We'll remove all the redlining. We'll send you back a copy of your redline policy in an archive file to make sure that you have a document of the changes that you made this time. Keep that archived in this left section, Leah, probably for a year, just in case you have questions or something may come up. And then if not, you can send production an email to move that archive to retired, or you could just simply delete them all. You won't use them after a year anyhow, and it would just avoid some clutter for you. So go to, your treasure's not on there, right?
Correct.
Let's go to what we call the Edgar. See the Edgar revisions at the top left, January 2021. Edgar is the U.S. Department of Education government accounting regulations for public school districts and states on how they have to utilize and procedures or regulations for spending federal money. If you receive federal money, you have to have these certain policies in place, even if they don't really apply to you, where you're not buying equipment and stuff with federal money. You might somewhere down the line, but since you guys have federal money, you have to have these policies in place. I bring that up because a lot of smaller districts know they won't spend federal money to buy large purchases, and so they would not do these policies. The problem is, because you have federal money, you must have the policies whether you use them or not. So you can look at the overview for the Edgar revisions. I would encourage you to share that information with your treasurer. You have 4 policies. When the revisions came out in the fall, we went ahead and sent the first 2, 6114 and 6325.
Ed, we started on that. We did the first reading of 6114 and 6325.
Okay, good. Yeah, I
But we
do.
did not do the other two.
Yeah, you had board approval, I think, on the 21st of January.
They weren't a board approved, where I have to change that. I have to update that to, I think it was the first reading, wasn't in our last
On
meeting?
our last board meeting.
Our last board meeting.
Okay,
would be-
good.
They'll be approved for final on, where are we? March 4th.
Okay, that's fine. Just make sure that production gets the right disposition with the signed dates and
I'll
stuff.
change those dates, yeah.
Do you need me to go over those two? Any questions on those? If you've gone through them, it sounds like you guys have addressed them, just so your treasurer's aware of it. And did you guys get a new treasurer?
Well, Patty's been with us since July or August.
Okay, so the new treasurer came on last summer. I just
Yeah.
heard you had a change in treasurer.
Yep.
Okay, then on 7450 is property inventory. So Leah, if you want to pull that up. There are some options here that you guys have to review. I took your active policy and put in the options of the revisions. I didn't make any decisions on this. This is typically for you to decide, or your treasurer. And when you're doing your inventory, we know that you're continuously updating your inventory supplies, but you have to reconcile that at least once every 2 years. Some are doing it every year. If you would like to decide not to do it just annually, but once every year or every 2 years, you would have to select that. Now, you are claiming that you're doing it at least once annually. So if that's the case, after the word annually and that option paragraph or parentheses option, you could strike that line all the way through to the end of the hard parenthesis. And then your gap reporting requirements is your annual report that you have to do your gap conversion. And that's how you convert your value of your inventory. And then if you could scroll down. These additional requirements were added this last year by the federal government, and so therefore we include that into the policy language. 7455, the accounting system of fixed assets. I'm not sure why we always called it. I think originally in Ohio we called them fixed assets for school districts, but it's really capital assets. So we finally made the change from fixed to capital. That is the change throughout the entire policy. We've also included the requirement of capitalization of your assets. This is all done through your gap conversion for the accounting. You guys probably have heard that term. When you do your audit, the state audit, they need to have your assets and stuff converted. And so the gap conversion, the generally acceptable accounting practices converted. So when the auditors do the audit, they're able to see an apples to apples for all school districts and government entities here in Ohio because of the fund and the cash system that is used at the end of the year. So there's not a lot of change options there, but you should have your treasurer review those to make sure that person chimes in and is comfortable with the changes. So that would include those 4 policies then. So Leah, if you would then go to the volume 39.2, these are the general changes that have taken place. There are several legal alerts. I'd encourage you all to review those legal alerts. There's really nothing new or striking that changes any of the policies other than the legal alert number 7, use of facial recognition technology. Are you guys dealing with that? You just have to look at those options. And then another good one is item 8, legal alert for legal issues that school officials and employees need to be aware of when using social media. I know you guys had questions about social media in the past, so you want to review that. Our attorneys provide the legal alerts just to provide an additional awareness of these hot topics every update that we do. The first one is 2240, controversial issues. We revised your copy. As you'll scroll down, you'll see that we've made one major change. In this paragraph, we've struck the area of however such exercise or expression may be limited to lunch periods or before or non-instructional time. This was a change in the law last year where we made the updates to reflect other areas of where students are allowed to express freedom of religion in all their activities. In the past, there was some court cases that ruled that kids could only express their religious beliefs or pray in free time during lunch, before and after school. And the law changed last year about this time that allows students to be able to do that in their activities, their assignments, and so on. So this change reflects the current law. 2260.01 is another prohibition of discrimination.
Which one?
2260.01.
I don't see that one in here. What am I missing?
Yeah, it's not there.
I have it here that it's missing. I'm not quite sure. So Leah, if you could go to the active policies at the top and look up 2260.01. It means you do have this policy. So as you'll go over and use a right click, for some reason, it didn't copy over. So right click on the title in the left margin and make a copy of it. So duplicate it. Now, we're going to go to the, don't edit that, not yet. What we'll do is go to the policy drop-down chevron and go to the updates right there. So go down to local policy update, click on that. Click on 2021. Scroll down to the update 39.2. Click on that. Now we'll scroll down. Keep scrolling down and go to the single item 2260.01. Right there.
There it is.
Click on that. Let's see how your okay, now see in the upper left, this is a change. Something happened with board docs and it didn't change or switch over a lot of these policies or different unique policies in different districts. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of how we could go through and change this. So in the big window, you'll see those 2 blue pages right there. Click on that. Change the destination to the policy manual. Select that book. It should make a copy and put it over in the draft page. I don't know why it didn't do that, and I had to have you guys do it because it wouldn't transfer for me. So scroll down to 39. I just don't know why it didn't work. So scroll down and see if the 22
There it is.
60.01 is in there. I don't know why it didn't switch. I couldn't move it over there. It was something you guys had to do. So with this one, as you scroll down through it, you'll see that same kind of changes are needed in this. So we would delete the drafting notes, the school district, compliance officers. You would copy and paste, Leah, information you had on Swisher and Carol, and be able to paste that right in there. I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I was having problems, and
Okay.
I kept complaining to board docs, and I'm thinking that they corrected that, and that was back on the 1st of February. So I'm hoping that, and I just haven't been able to go back in. So you understand how you would do that. You would make those consistent changes right there with the compliance officers. Scroll on down, you'll see the exact same changes that we had to make earlier.
Okay.
If you run into problems, please call me and let me know.
Okay.
There's really not a lot of options, just your compliance officers and clarifying that they are responsible. So edit that when you're ready to do that. So at least now it is in your group. That's one that you have to do.
Okay.
The next one should be the 2266.
There we go.
This was the Title IX policy that was approved last summer. We've taken your current one and updated it. You won't see a lot of changes in it because you elected to use the second option. The law changed at the federal level on the definitions of rape, and that changed January 1st. You were proactive and you accepted that updated version that went into effect January 1st. So there's not a lot of changes there for you. Keep going. You got a little more. And then there are some changes. So that way the board's aware of the changes. The only change you had in there is that many school districts wanted to be able to implement disciplinary behavior before the conclusion. And that one last change that you saw in there allows the district some flexibility of making disciplinary measures, implementing appropriate remedies, however, excluding disciplinary sanctions while the appeal is pending. And so generally, you don't want to discipline somebody unless it's pretty critical and you have to remove that person from the environment. And generally, you wouldn't do disciplinary actions until the appeal is over, just to be fair. All right, so make those changes. The next one is in the financial realm of 4166, investments. Again, have your treasurer review these changes. This was a minor change that we fixed last year, but I noticed that we had some conflicting language. You're now allowed under item 5, bonds and other obligations mature within 10 years from the date of settlement. So the law changed last year that allowed districts to have obligations that mature up to 10 years versus the limitation of 5 years. It may not seem much, and many districts may not have different obligations maturing longer than 5 years, but some do, and especially if you're in a building plan where you're renovating facilities and so on. So as you scroll down a little bit further, there's a contradictory area underneath this one here. So after B, you have except as provided in section B above or as otherwise provided by law. Because the law changed and allowed districts to do up to 10 years, this was a contradictory that there are certain obligations that will mature at 5 years or within 5 years. And there were some districts that felt that was contradictory, which it is. So the provision just helps clarify it. In case some districts do have obligations that mature up to 10 years versus 5. So it's a minor change, but it helps clarify, especially for auditors. The next change is 6146. This is something that you must review. I cannot make decisions or merging on this one because this policy itself is mainly for districts that have bond issues and obligations, probably for building a new building or other debts like that. You should have your treasurer review it to make sure that this doesn't apply or may apply if you guys are looking at building a new facility in the next couple of years, because it deals with the tax obligations. I don't believe this would be new for you if you need it. So if you don't have it, it would be new for you if you need it. If your treasurer has questions, I'm happy to go for it. But the treasurer, especially ones that are putting out bonds for new facilities, things like that, are familiar with these requirements. Many times the bond counsel that you use to help you get the bonds and approve the bonds will give you language. You either pay for the language or you can use it from Neola, and it would help you. The next one is 6220, tax preparation. Many districts have elected to use this policy to establish a budget reserve. Not all districts do this. If you decide that you would like to maintain a budget reserve level, either established by board resolution or established by a percentage of your general fund or something. Many places would do 3 to 6 months of expenses and set that aside in a resolution and claim that the board cannot spend that reserve. You must maintain that reserve in case an issue of a levy failure, to give you 6 months leeway to help fund your district. It also removes that money because of the board resolution and the policy. It removes that money from consideration for teacher salary increases. So it's something that you have to think through. There's some subtle nuances that may allow you to handle this budget reserve. You may be able to do it. I'm not sure, but you have to look at your finances to determine if there's need for a budget reserve. It becomes suspect when boards decide to make a budget reserve at the start of negotiations. So having this preset out ahead of time allows you to be proactive, and you're not doing I gotchas with the board and negotiations. So think it through. It may and may not be applicable, and of course, have your treasurer review that. The next one would be 6600. Yeah, 6600, deposit of public funds. It just helps provide additional clarification on anybody that's collecting money in your district, what they have to do with it. and therefore allows you more flexibility of disciplinary measures if there are individuals that do not follow the board policy. Secretaries cannot collect the magazine money and leave it sit in her desk drawer for 3 weeks. I've seen that happen. And there'd be $4,000 sitting in a secretary's desk drawer. It's like, ay. So you want to make sure that your treasurer does review this to make sure you're all on the same page. Next one is 7440. Yeah, 7440.01. This is your video surveillance. I've updated and put the revisions in your current policy. You do have this policy. Now there's a change here, Carolyn, to make sure you're aware. We added the provision to allow the board president to be able to provide written authorization. So there's 2 areas. The superintendent generally has always had the ability to do the authorization to provide video surveillance. But what happens if the superintendent's the one that we have to put under video surveillance? Superintendent can't really write or wouldn't normally approve surveillance of themselves. So therefore, it gives the authority and oversight with the board president the ability to do video surveillance as well. Scroll down on it. I just want to make sure. I think that's the biggest change. There's also some additional clarification, and a lot of your teachers are doing online learning. And so therefore, can you use pre-recorded lessons and so on for evaluations? So this gives you additional latitude and support in board policy to use online surveillance of your teachers as far as their evaluations. 80, and that's ready to go. 8450.01, use of district face coverings. Many districts used an attorney to draft this out. I think you guys don't even, you have, yes, you guys had your attorney draw up a specific face mask covering. I did not touch this one because you have to decide if you want to use our template and update it with some of the new exemptions that were updated here in late summer and the fall to wearing a face covering. But you guys have district specific language that your attorney's done, and you could update it if you feel the need. If not, leave it alone, and then Leah could put on the disposition sheet, reject this policy change.
Ed, if I can interrupt for 1 second, my apologies. I have to jump off of this meeting and jump onto another meeting for the ESC. I want to thank you so much. You're always so thorough and comprehensive in your explanations of policies and helping us work through them. So it's good to see you.
Same here. Good luck, Carol, to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hi, Karen.
Food service. Basic changes that also reflect some of the gender issues that we've talked about earlier, but also to bring in line with the federal EDGAR compliances. There's some changes in the federal guidance that we have to do things to remove stigma of the children who may have unpaid meal balances. We had a lot of craziness last spring and the beginning of the school year with the COVID and people losing jobs and not being able to pay. And I think the state was beneficial by just telling everybody gets their lunches. And so nobody was paying for lunches. And so that allowed everybody to meet the federal guidelines. So the law states that we shall also address feeding students with unpaid meal balances without stigmatizing them or singling them out with other people in the community. If you scroll down, I think the one on the free waters. Okay, that's the next one on wellness. So that one's ready to go too. Item 8510, student wellness. There's this big change that you see right in front of you. Because school districts are shutting down water fountains and stuff, and unless you put in filtered water, but bottle fillers, instead of allowing kids to drink from the drinking fountains, we had to shut down all of our water fountains. And so you have to be able to provide free drinking water available to students, especially at mealtime. And a lot of places were just handing out bottled water. I know one of my clients put in drinking fountains. They took out drinking fountains, but put in filtered bottled water fillers. And then they gave their all the students and staff members a district water bottle, the stainless steel bottle that people can go and fill up from the bottle fillers in the building.
We put those in every building, folks, just so you know. And some of the buildings, some of the elementaries did do a bottle, I think. I'm not sure, for sure one of them, but we did put those in.
Good. So you at least have to provide that, and we have to put that in the policy because of the new federal rules. Also, your healthy snacks with USDA Smart Stack school standards. Those changes, they seem to change with every presidential administration. So you may have additional changes again with the new administration. We'll have to wait and see. And then this is an option. The board designates the superintendent or the building principals as individuals charged with operational responsibility for measuring, evaluating, implementation of this policy. Generally, the superintendent does that with a food service coordinator or somebody that's in there. Some smaller districts are using building principals. But I couldn't make that change. That's an option for you. And that should be the changes. That would complete the 3 different updates that came through our attorneys this year based on changes in federal regulations for financial procedures, your discrimination updates to bring us completely compliant with all areas of discrimination and anti-harassment and sexual harassment items. Questions, concerns, problems? The idea of us being able to do it the way we did it, we merged your active policies. So then that way it allows the board to see your active policy and the changes in the actual policy. You could start, and I think we talked about this before, where you just simply start with the templates and start over. Many school districts do that. I think when Mike and I talked about it, we felt it was easier and more effective time use by merging the updates with your current policy. So you would redline or delete things from your current policy. So you have to decide, is it better to just start from scratch with each one of the templates? And we can do either one, whatever helps you guys. So I hope that helps. Let me know what kind of questions you might have.
And will this policy update get all of our policies then up to date at this present time?
I think it does, because I had done all of your other policies last summer and in the fall to catch you up. And if that's at this point, we got to get board approval, and then we must get, once they're approved, sent to Neola, production@neola.com, to make sure they can clean out all the red lines and update your policy manual. So by the time you get this done and those other updates that we had done before this, board approved and then sent to production, then you should, within 2 or 3, it depends on the timing. I would say normally 2 to 3 weeks for production to catch everything up. If you wait late spring. Everybody in Ohio is sending their stuff in late spring, and everybody from Michigan, Indiana, Florida are all. So the sooner, Pat, Corbett, and Neola, they try to get Ohio first in that sequence. So when districts drag their feet to a month, 2 months, 3 months afterwards, it bogs them down. And so they won't get their policies updated on their manual within 3 weeks, and it may take 5 weeks. And some districts are okay with that. You actually have your active policies that have been approved by the board, and you could present that to auditors or people that need to know it. But it's nice having it all done and behind you on the district website. And then also know that occasionally we have updates. The law changes in Ohio, and we have to do a special update. We get that information out to you as soon as we can. I don't go out and do updates and help people with that. But if you have issues or questions, you got to call me and let me know, and I'll help you with that. And then the next update should be out at the end of August. And we don't like seeing a whole lot of different legislative changes, but we didn't get a lot of changes from the lame duck session in December, so that's kind of good. But this is a budget year, and what happens in a budget year, governors tend to put new changes to school district procedures in the funding mechanism. And so we may have a busy summer and update if the state legislators and the governor changes our rules. Just to kind of give you a heads up. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Contact me. Let me know if there's anything that you need, Mike or Carolyn, and let me know. I'm happy to help anytime.
We sure appreciate it, Ed. Very thorough and detailed. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, guys. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see I'll send a little synopsis to the whole board. I don't think we have a ton of things. Usually we take Neola's advice, but there are a few things, and then I'll get with Patty and make sure she looks at the further financial policies.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that's a good plan. Mike, are you comfortable with the board's the policy elections and options that have been chosen in the past? Is there anything you see that you would recommend to be different?
No, I didn't see anything I would recommend to be different. The only one you might want to just think about in a Title IX or discrimination case, if you want the board to be the final decision or the superintendent. And if you have questions about that, you can ask, let me know. And I think we probably need to have a discussion with Patty about the 6220, which is board reserve, where you reserve an amount of funds. I've been in districts where we did do that as a board and superintendent. Those I think were the two big things, and they're not that big that I thought. I want to go back and look at in the legal alert. I have not seen that one about social media, so I need to go back and take a look at that, because let's face it, that's on all of our minds all the time. It's a very popular thing these days, social media. So I'd say those are from my end.
What about the face coverings?
The face coverings, let me go back and look. I don't think ours is that much different from Neola's, but let me look and see.
Does anyone have any further questions on any of the policy recommendations and changes? Is
Okay.
there anything else? Okay, then that will end the meeting then. Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right,
everyone.
thanks, everybody.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Let me run to the restroom and then. Really have to drink all this water. Okay.